2026, and this is something that the guys here as well as myself have been talking about, software, right? We always have that conversation about software, and today's meeting isn't about getting your 2020 out and pushing all the buttons. We'll have that meeting. I don't know when that meeting is, but as soon as we decide on that, we'll make sure to get that text out to you guys so you know. It'll likely be, we usually shoot for the middle of March somewhere. But today is really about making sure that you're prepared, giving you time to make the decision on what software you should run, why it matters, to make sure that when you get to the field on the first day to plant, that you're where you need to be. So that's really what we want to talk about, and then we'll spend some more time going through Panorama, talking to you guys about how Panorama works, showing you some of the features that we have, some of the features that we're working on, just to get you kind of leveled up so that you know whether it's a program that you want to run, something that fits your operation, or it's something that doesn't. So we'll start this afternoon. Try to keep you guys awake. That was a pretty delicious meal. As you talk about software, sometimes it can get a little bit confusing, so stop me. I may have the gift of I know, so it maybe makes sense to me, but if it doesn't make sense to you, make sure that we go back. So the conversation here is really of what considerations do we have for software, what does it look like this spring for software, and really how do we prepare you guys to make sure that you have the best experience possible. Okay, so we'll cover a couple of things that are inside language that if I don't do this ahead of time, when I'm all done here in the next 25, 30 minutes, you're going to say, huh? Okay, so there's a few things as we think about 2020 software, and we're really kind of specifically focusing on Gen 3. I believe most of you that were asked to be here today or should be all Gen 3 customers, or you're thinking about it, or you're going to be. So when you think about Precision Planting Gen 3 2020 software, we really have two different software paths that we talk about with you guys. Okay? And when we look at those software paths, the numbering of our software update tells you what path you're on. Okay, so you got the black letters, which is 2020, would be 2026 this year. That would be the X is the year. So 2026 dot would be 2026 software. If you brought your 2020 in today and it's on 2023.0.0, you've got 23 year software. The Y, the orange Y, is what version you're running. We have a production version of software, which is a version that has been run through the ringer. It runs all of our stapled products. It's going to be a very stable version of software, very few updates throughout the year. And then we also have a limited release software. We also need air. Okay, I'll let Derek take care of that for us. Or we'll get full air and we'll get good shape. There we go. So the last digit then is the revision number. Okay, so if I look at the software and I say I'm on 24.1.0, 24 is my year, the first dot would be production or limited, and the last one would be what revision that year we're on. Okay, so the software we're talking about this year would be 0.6.0.0 would be our production software. Okay, again, as I mentioned, that's going to be a stable platform of software. It's going to have as many of the fixes as we know of. It's going to have all of our legacy hardware will run through it. So if I'm a Delta V-Drive planter, Speed 2 planter, those products have been out for quite a while, I'm going to run on that production software. Now we also have a .1 version of software. Okay, so 2026.1 will be that limited release version. So this version is going to be a little bit faster changing. It's going to include compatibility with the latest products, the latest things that are limited commercial release for us. So this is going to have those new products. With that though, knowing it's new products, we're going to have some software revisions that we might need to look at. So this software is not intended for everyone. This is intended for the guys that are going to have new products or want those new features. They would run that limited release software. Okay, so some of you that ran limited release software last year, I received several of these phone calls. You lifted your planter on the end of the field, and as you were making the corner, your outside 2 rows on Delta Force may have actually lifted up and then set back down. Okay, so didn't cause any issues in the field, but there's a few of those little changes. So we expect that on a production software, we would change software throughout the season, maybe once. Right? Maybe there'd be an update, and typically Texas would find that update long before it would get to North Dakota. The limited release software, we're on version 8 right now. Okay, so we've had 8 revisions throughout the year on that limited release software. So I just want to get that out on the table, level the playing field. If there's 2 versions, today is going to be the day where I'm going to try to help you decide, as I go into 2026, what version of software should I run? I know, really exciting. I can see the joy on everybody's face. Okay, so we'll try to make it fun. Again, ask questions. you saw something last year, you ran a different version, you don't understand, definitely raise your hand. So the first question that we have to ask is, what software am I running? I would guess that less than 10% of you in the room probably know what software version you're running, or you ran last year. If you updated last year and you didn't run Panorama, you ran 25.0 production software. If you ran Panorama last year, you ran 25.1, limited production release software. Okay, so if we know what software you're on, many of you brought your 2020 in today. We appreciate that. We're going to make sure that we get you to the most recent version on the path that you're on, make sure that all your data is there, and get you really leveled up again so that we're all kind of at the same spot. Okay, where does our software come from? All of our software updates for the 2020 come from 2020.ag. So this is the website we go to. We talk about it a lot during operations clinics as well. We use the flash drive, we download the software, we can put it into our display, and we can do the update. Now we also have the ability to do it through Wi-Fi, so I can go on my Gen 3 display, have a connection with my Wi-Fi in the shop or with a hotspot, and I can do an install through Wi-Fi as well. Keep in mind though that I don't cross lines. So if I'm running production software this year, if I'm on 26.0 or I'm on 25.0 from last year, I can't jump to .1 through the Wi-Fi update. We don't allow you to cross the line. It's for your own protection. Okay? Okay, so again, what's the point? What are we after here for the first few minutes this afternoon is, what software should I operate in 2026? Now this is going to be a choice that you're going to get to make, but we want to make sure that you're all educated well and you know what each version kind of does, and you can hopefully make that decision before you're ready to leave here so we can get you there or help get you there. Now, if you're not confused enough about software, I'm going to throw up this really confusing timeline. Now, when you look at the way that we've done software in the past, there's been a bump in the road a few of those years that led us to where we were at last year. Okay, so typically our limited production release software from the previous year, in this case, back in 2020, our limited release became production of 2021. And then in 2021, our limited release became production of 22. So we took everything we learned in 2021 on that limited production software. We implemented all the fixes, we gathered all the data, we fixed it all up, we made it the production release for next year. In 2022 to 2023, we made a significant change to the architecture of the 2020 in .1 software. At that moment, we made the decision for you guys that we were not going to push you to the .1 version of software. So 23 to 24 to 25 has been basically the same version of software, just with fixes. Now, if you didn't run Clarity, or you didn't run Panorama or Symphony Nozzle, you didn't want Pass Master, you didn't want any of the new features, 25.0 fit the bill for you. And many of you that ran 25.0, including all the feedback from the dealers, and myself would say that 25.0 is a very stable version of software. It is that way because it's basically been the same version since 2023. Okay, we did the same thing with .1, so as we built the limited release versions, we continue to carry those forward and learn from them. Now 25 is the year that we make that change again. Okay, so as we move into this next season, we're going to have 3 options of software for you to run. And we want you all to choose the right version for you, but we want to make sure we're leveled up to the right version of software. So 2025.1 is going to become production 26.0 next year, and then 26.1 will actually be another version that will be available for us. Does any of this make any sense? I drew the graphic, right? So I have the curse of knowledge. I know what it means. So if I'm running a planter that's got Delta V-Drive and Speed Tube on it, Delta V-Drive and Speed Tube were released before 2020. 25.0 runs all those products. Now, as I'm looking at my planter, as I'm looking at decisions I'm going to make in the future, products that I want to run, it may change the path that I'm on. Let's do this. Let's just jump to the next slide and look at moving forward. This is 2025 versions of software. Going into 2026, each of these software versions has a path. And these are really the versions that you're going to choose from before we get to the field. Okay, so current production software, 2025.0. There is no planned change for 25.0. Okay, so 25.0 and 26 will still be 25.0 software. It will still operate everything that was on your planter that it operated last year. If I'm running Panorama or I want to run Panorama, 25.1 software ran Panorama last year. 26.0 will be Panorama software. Okay, so it will include all the .1 features, including Panorama, Gen 3 Air Force, Gen 3 Rate Control, we'll go through that list here in just a minute.
So those are the two places that we want to land to start with. And your 25.0 is going to be everything prior to 25.0. So your delta V drives, V tube, those types of things. That's all going to be a great place to land. And if you don't have any of those other pieces on your planner, or don't plan to move into those, 25 is a great place to land. And it helps on the diagnostic side of things, because when there's 6-8 different versions of software that call into here, and then we spend so much time trying to figure out where you're at and how to fix your problem and move within that monitor. If we can move everybody to 25 at a base, and then if you have panorama, which we'll talk about in a bit, then we'll move you to 26.0. And if you were going to do some, we'll talk about at the end here as far as what kind of other products, specific products this year that the .1 software will require. So it's 25.0, and it is not panorama. 26.0 is panorama, and 26.1 would be.
I'll cover all that.
Other the stuff on the other end.
So through my little chart, many of you are maybe asking, well, where did 25.1 come from? What in 24 became 25.1? Well, we have a product development field testing version, which is usually a .10 or .100 branch, which doesn't need to be anything to you, but that's our software that we run some of the beta products on that ultimately gets transitioned into that next version. So last year's version that we ran Symphony Vision on, last year's version that we ran some of these new products on will become 26.1 of this year. Again, we do cleanups, we do fixes, we do testing all throughout the winter. It's running across the globe in a lot of different places. But that's really kind of what our paths moving forward are for 26. So 25.0, 26.0, or going to the .1 release of software, which we can talk about the features of. I have 26.0 on my monitor. When we talk about Panorama, we will be using 26.0. If you'd like to see what 26.1 looks like, and we'll get to that here in just a minute, but it is on the 2-row stand back there. So if you want to see what does that layout look like, what does the screen look like, you have the ability to look back there and see. Any questions so far? Killer stuff. I mean, I transitioned from AeroTube into software. That's pretty good.
You know, there's 25.0. Can you variable rate your planting population? It's like you have, and then have certain rows be a constant.
Yeah.
I was on the .1. For some reason, I was on the .1 software.
Yeah, you should, in 25.0, if you wanted to have a prescription rate applied on some rows and not a prescription on other rows, you'd be able to set up 2 control sections, apply the prescription to one control section and not to the other. Yeah, you can do that in 25.0. Yep.
I believe you're also on .1 for your air seeder.
If you have clarity, you would be on .1. Yep. And 26.0 will do the same thing. Good question. And those are the questions that we're absolutely happy to answer, guys. That's really part of what this is about. Is I know we're a big group, but we're all friends here. At least we are today, I guess. I don't know. But. Okay, so as Chris was talking about, for many of you guys that are running a planter that you've run for years, it worked great for you last year on 25.0 or on 23.0. You haven't added any new products. You have a staple that you've run for several years. What we would like to do is get you to 25.0. Okay, so 25.0 is a very safe jump from 23.0, 24.0, 22.0. Again, as I said when we started, for a purpose, it is a very stable version of software. There's a few things in it that are pretty important. Some of you guys maybe noticed that when you boot your 2020, sometimes your sound is a little bit weird. 25.0 fixes the sound card issue that we had in previous release versions. There's also some other safeguards in it. We don't want to bring up 2020 and 2021 years with chip shortages and other things, but we have some safeguards built in as well with that software that allows firmware compatibility with new chipsets. So if I have an SRM that fails or I have a V-drive motor that fails, I get a new one. We guarantee that we have matching firmware, that things are going to marry up and work well. We've also got several updates that we've had since then. One of the comments and one of the things that product support has talked about in Tremont is, from a support standpoint, we would really like you to be on one of the more current versions of software. If you call in and you're talking to one of our folks in Tremont, although we have a 2020 on almost every version that was available of those different releases, It's a lot easier for them and faster if you're on 25.0. So likely you'd be asked to move to 25.0 if you're on a previous version. Okay? So if I'm going to go from 25.0, I'm looking at making the update to that. I wasn't on 25.0. There'd be a couple things I want to make sure that I do. And if I'm on a fairly old version of software, 2021 and previous version, so that means I haven't updated in a long time. I bought my 2020 5 years ago, and I haven't updated once. It'd probably be a good idea to talk to the team here, because there's some backups that we want to do. Prescriptions, boundaries, those things can be lost when we do the update. If I'm on 2022.0, so 2022 software and later, download the update from 2020.ag, do the update, everything will come across, no issues. We always suggest that you export configuration when you do a software update. I always suggest that. I guess it's just my safeguard, but I don't think I do it myself. But it's not a bad idea to export configurations, just straight update to 25.0. Okay, so for the majority of you that don't want to run Panorama, let me rephrase that. For all of you that don't want to run Panorama, 25.0 is where we'd like you to be. Okay? Now, if I'm looking at using new features, if I'm looking at, hey, well, what would 26.0 do for me? What options are there? The first one that we talk about is Panorama, and that's kind of the later part of our conversation here this afternoon is if I have 26.0, I can use Panorama, which gives me the ability to send the data from my 2020 through a cellular connection or through a Wi-Fi or data connection straight to Panorama. They actually give you the ability to use that row cleaner control module, have multiple on the planter. If I've got airbags on the planter, or maybe I'm looking at trying to enhance some of my control, I can also use that to control the airbags of air force on the planter. So I get some better capability with the dual pressure module. Not huge, but it's something. Rate module, so Gen 3 seating rate control. If I've got a Gen 3, I'm running Delta Force, and maybe I haven't taken over seat control. I actually in 26.0 would be able to control both of my hydraulic drives on my planter, as well as if I wanted to run sectional clutches, I could run clutches through a swath module on 26.0 as well. Somebody asked about control sections. In 25.0 and previous versions of software, our production release, we had control sections for seating, okay, but we didn't have control sections for anything else. So maybe for downforce, I'd like to manage the wings of my planter different than the center. For closing, I'd like to manage different parts of the planter different because of attachments or because of wheel tracks. With 26.0, I can actually have a control section for every one of my systems. So if I want to split delta force, my downforce control, into 4 sections, I can do that in the 26.0 release. Furrow force, we've got better alerts as it relates to whether we're getting the correct downforce, if we've got a rock stuck, some enhancements there. And finally, if I have a 16-inch display, I would need to run 26.0 software for that function. The other thing would be dual 10-inch support enhancements. So if I'm getting rid of the app of the iPad and the cab app in my tractor, I'm going to transition to Panorama, and I want that second map. I actually have good support to run 2 10-inch monitors at the same time. Okay, so those would be all the reasons to go to 26.0. If that's something that interests you, you would want to make that switch from 26.0. Anybody that today is on 25.1, which would be what software would have run a lot of those features, we want you to go to 26.0. Okay, so again, this is really the path of today. At a bare minimum, if you were on limited production release last year, you ran Panorama last year, we want you to be on 26.0 this year. Okay, really everything for the most part is the same. One of the things that we've done, backed by popular demand, is we tied the crop settings to the active crop. So if you were a limited release software user last year, and you switched from corn to soybeans, you had to switch your discs and your V drive, you had to switch a bunch of the settings. 26.0, we finally won the battle. We are going to tie that back to the crop, okay? The other thing that we did in 26.0, for those of you guys that use Pass Masters, we've filtered the passes better so it's easier for you to find that other planter, other combine, other sprayer out there. Again, from a precision planting support standpoint, we would like you to be on 26.0 if that is the path that you want to be on. Anything you want to throw at this, Chris?
That's just kind of the basis about wanting to move everybody to the least amount of softwares that we have available. So then your time that you spend on the phone with us to be able to fix a specific problem you have, we've got a head start on what software you're in, so we can talk the same language versus trying to hunt and peck between 2 different monitors that might not line up. Ours ours being here and yours being in the cab. Just speeds everything up, and it brings everybody to the same point, so we can just streamline some of our software things.
We also know that out there in some of those previous versions of the .1 software, of a limited release software, that there are some bugs, and if you're on a 24 branch of limited release software, we have made enhancements and we've made fixes, and we really don't want you planting with that software. We would rather have you planting with this year's release of what that branch is. So the part of this is to get everybody, again, I started with leveled up, get everybody on that version so that we have the best experience in the field. Okay, so considerations to look at if you're updating from 25.1, so limited release to this year's production release. Again, flash drive in, update, all of your configurations should come across. No issues, nothing to really look at. If you're one of those folks that didn't run Panorama last year, and you're thinking about there was something on that list that you liked, I excited you about something on that list, and you're saying, I want to go to 26.0, I want to get the new capabilities, highly recommend working with the guys here. There have been some pretty major changes between 25.0 or the production software to what this new version is that requires quite a bit of additional setup, including CAN devices being assigned, row devices being assigned, configurations of different types of row units, liquid system settings, and a lot of that stuff is not going to carry over seamlessly. And it would be way easier for us to help you now than for you to be sitting at the end of the field wanting to plant and not be able to. So part of that is, if you want to make that change, today's the day. We'll give you an opportunity to call that out here in a private manner of, if I want to do this, let us know, because we want to help you do it.
It's just time sensitive thing. We have the blessing of time now, not so much in May. So we want to move those machines to this software, then we want to be a part of that to help that out, because it gets to be quite a drawn out situation, because the growers not 100% happy with the moving to a different software, because now he can't get moving again, and just to try to simplify things and make it better for everybody involved. So that's something we would do. You know, getting to 25 is pretty simple, straightforward. If we're going to go to the Panorama software, 26 and above, then we would make a point when to come out to the farm, and we would then dig into how the planter is set up, make sure that everything's set up correctly on that screen. And that's basically going to be time spent out there as far as the cost involved to that. But I think that's way outweighs any issues that we might come into contact with in May. It's expensive time in May.
So if you brought your 2020 in today, and you were on a .0, a production release of software, the intention would be to get you to the latest production release. And if you were on a limited release of software, the intention would be to get you to the latest revision of that, which is 26.0. So every 2020 that leaves here today is going to either be on 25.0 or 26.0.
Correct.
Okay.
We're gonna do as many as we can.
Many, and it leaves, and the ones that don't leave today are going to get that done too. They just aren't going to leave today. So I wasn't right. I just wasn't wrong.
I believe that you gained so many distance that all they're prioritizing those, live just outside of town. We'll get into it.
Yeah. So if you want to make a change, obviously if you're on the new version, excuse me, if you're on the limited release last year, you're running Panorama, there would be no reason that you would want to go back to the old version. If you were on the .0 release, 25.0, 24.0, and Panorama is something you say, I know I want to do this, we're going to give you an opportunity at the end here to let the guys know that I want to make that change, and we'll take the steps now to do it. Okay? So those are kind of our two options that we have that are options that I would say we're pushing for. Okay, the next option is not an option that we're pushing for. This is awareness. This is really saying, hey, what does it look like if I go to 26.1? Okay, remember what I said at the beginning of this. If I don't say this, Brecken's going to hang me up at the end of this session. What did I say about .1 software in the beginning? So this is not for everyone. Okay, so this is a version that is going to have, it's going to have some quirks, it's going to have some bugs, it's going to have many revisions of software that go into it, because this is going to have some of our latest products on it. But there is some cool things coming in 26.1 that I hope are going to get you excited. It sure gets me excited. And one of the first things is we've done a facelift to the 2020. So we've finally taken the screen, we've kind of let go of what the Gen 2 display looked like. We've optimized the space, done a lot of things to make that home screen look better, easier to configure, easier for you to see multiple points of data on the same screen. So really done a real good refresh and an update to what it looks like. So things like, as I'm looking at create new layers, if I'm a limited release software person from prior, I know that as I updated that new release, where did my layouts go? I don't know where they went either, but they're not there anymore, right? And I got to set up from the beginning and from scratch. So we've actually got to where we've got layouts that are by system. So if I want to start a new layout quickly, I can start with the base seating, and then I can start building from there. We've also got dynamic resizing of everything. So as I start to build that screen, previously I put a widget in, I'm like, I should have a smaller one. So I deleted that one, I went back, I found the smaller one. In this case, if I put a widget there and it doesn't quite fill the space, or I need more room, I can just go in, I can drag, I can resize, I can make everything look and fit in all the right spots. Also, something I found very useful this morning is I accidentally deleted one, and I found there was an undo button at the top of the screen. So I hit undo, I got back what I wanted. Really gives us a lot of flexibility of how we can operate and make the 2020 look. So charts optimized, a better way to view, again, dashboard mini chart that we had across the bottom. We used to only be able to have one. Now I can fill the entire screen with dashboard mini charts if I want. I can have a 10-inch display that just has dashboard mini charts if I want to do that. It gives me a lot more flexibility to see data in a more usable way, a way that makes more sense to you guys. So obviously our UI team has spent a ton of time on this. Probably the hardest thing to get used to is we move the setup button from the bottom right-hand corner. Now, of course, we thought about that. For those of you guys that are creatures of habit, you can put the setup button back down there, but moving all that to the top and giving you that status bar across the top, optimizing alerts, making things not be a full page warning, really enhances the experience that you have. So different types of widgets, troubleshoot faster. We can actually put the diagnose screen on the home page. So if we're fighting an issue, we need to be able to see the metrics and diagnose at the same time. We've got the ability to do that as well. Okay, so pretty cool stuff, pretty exciting. It's hard to be excited about software, but in this case, it really refreshes. It gives us a lot of great capabilities. Along with that, 26.1 is going to have Panorama live stream edit. Okay, so we talked about Panorama. We'll talk about it here again shortly, but we have the ability to view the 2020 remotely. Okay, with 2020, with new .1 limited release software, we'll actually be able to have the ability to edit. Not only edit from a computer, but if I'm running one 2020 and Chris is running the other one, and he wants to edit what's on my 2020, he can actually remote into mine from his and actually make changes on my display without me having to do it. So guys that are going to run Symphony Vision, DrySet Micro, some of our newer Symphony systems, flow meter liquid control. So we have gotten to a point where we've got a new system. So if I have a John Deere rate controller on my planter now, that the only thing that my John Deere system controls today is just my liquid. I've got a centrifugal pump, I got a flow meter, and I got 3 or 4 section valves. Previously we couldn't control that. In .1 software, we'll be able to take the modules that we have available today, put those on, read your flow meter, control based off of flow and not a expected pump speed and pump displacement. I can't spell row, but there's some enhancements to diagnostics on Gen 3 row flow, or Gen 3 swath and Gen 3 rate systems. If you're going to make the jump to 26.1, dealer assistance would be highly recommended to do this. Okay, again, some more categorical changes in setup that really becomes pretty important as we update modules, as we update Ethernet connections. A lot of things need to change for us to have Symphony Vision. These are architectural changes in the background of the 2020 that are pretty important. Okay, so some of those changes behind the scenes, we're going to change the process and how we update. So that means that once your 2020 goes to 26.1, it's going to cross over a chasm that it can't cross over again. It only gets to jump once. The Dukes of Hazzard only gets to go across the one way. Okay, so again, this is why we say we need to make sure we have these conversations, that we assist you with it. The goal of the change is to make updates faster, to make it more stable, to give us more capabilities as it relates to Ethernet, how the display reads cameras for vision. So if you make the change over, that first jump is going to be big. After that, the file size will be a lot smaller and easier. Again, this is where we suggest partnering with the dealer, partnering with these guys to make that change. Okay, after that, when we move to next versions, it'll be much faster. One thing to call out about this, and again, it's kind of a protection for you guys, is the only way to get to the new limited release of software is to be on 26.0 first. So any of us that are on 25.0 cannot go directly to 26.1. It's not even allowed. The display will kick you out and say, nope, can't do it. Okay, so If I cross over to 26.1, I can never go back to 25.0. If I cross to 26.1, I can never go back to 25.0. That doesn't matter to me, but it might matter to you. Okay, so once we make that change, we have to stay there. And once the Ethernet device is updated again, it doesn't go back. So we cross over that chasm, and once we're over it, we have to stay there.
It's a process of how it talks with the Ethernet.
Right, it's an Ethernet change.
It doesn't eliminate the usefulness of any piece of equipment. It's
No.
just
Nope.
the way it communicates with the Ethernet devices, your DVM, your display, your field view module, if you have one of those things that plug in with that Ethernet in your cab are not gonna be able to be reversed back to a previous software.
Yep.
Your SRMs and all this stuff on the planner, that's fine, but what's in your cab is not gonna be able to go back. So, in previous years, we've had like, oh, I'm gonna go to 2020.ag and download software. If you download that software, you gotta sit through this, and then you're stuck there, because you can't go back.
The only,
Not stuck there in a bad way, just.
the only
just to know
affected
that-
devices would be Ethernet devices.
Yeah.
So your display, if you had a field view module, your DVM, SRMs, V-drive motors, none of that stuff is crossing a chasm. All that communication is the same. There's no reason that there's any compatibility there. If this has been on this, it can't go anywhere else. It's just in the display itself.
That's why we wanna be,
That's why we want to be clear about this, is if you go to 26.1 and say, I'd like to just be on 25.0, that's not going to be possible. Now, the beauty of it is it's not going to allow you to do it. So many guys have asked, well, if I try it, what's going to happen? It's just going to give you an, uh-oh, I can't. And so nothing that's harmful to the display or the DVM, nothing that's going to brick anything, other than a couple of nuances with the field view module that we'll talk about here in a second. So 25.0, 26.0, so moving to this year's production software is no problem. It's as soon as I cross over to 26.1, I can't go back to 25.0. I think I have a summary of that, but real quickly, the field view module, again, this would be where dealer assistance would be really highly recommended, is the field view module update is going to take some time. And we want to make sure that you don't unplug it at the wrong time, because there's a moment in time where if you don't plug the field view module, that you need a new one. So just make sure that if you're going to update, get help from these guys. If you're doing the update on your own, just don't unplug the field view module until the light turns purple. Any questions on that so far? If not, we're going to put a bow on this. We're going to try to put a bow on this. Okay, so just a check. 25.0 to go to 26.1, you can't do it. Okay, so if you're on 25.0, you go to 2020.ag, you download 26.1. We've saved you from the trouble. You can't go without getting to 26.0 first. So I have to be at 26.0 to go to 26.1. Again, once I cross over the chasm, I cannot come back to 25.0, but I can go back to 26.0. And as long as I haven't crossed into 26.1, I can always go back to previous versions, which we don't anticipate you need to do, but again, we want to make sure that everybody understands those changes. Where do we get the documentation? We talk a lot about cloud.precisionplanting.com. This year, we want to introduce docs.precisionplanting.com. If you're a QR code person, scan the QR code. I hope if I did it right, it will take you to docs.precisionplanting.com. This is a pretty interactive way to get into the Gen 3 guide, to get into the planter, sprayer information. All the most recent changes, recent updates, recent documentation will be here at docs.precisionplanting.com. There's a link there from Cloud, but again, this would give you the ability to get there the fastest and get some of that most recent information. Now that we're thoroughly confused, what questions do you have? Maybe we need to wake them up, turn the lights back on.
I don't know.
So, a few slides back, we had like the smart connect on the John Deere.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible, and maybe I missed this, but to get real-time data back, planting data back into your John Deere thing?
Yeah, I I've crossed over that, I forgot about that. So, yes, it is. The difference is when we go to 26.0 software and we have a smart connector in line, we just need to add an additional Y harness, because we changed the way that the data goes through the smart connector. So there's an additional Y harness that you need if you're gonna go to 26.0 if you have a smart connector. The only time you'd have a smart connector is if you had Delta Force and you didn't have seeding control. So if the 2020 doesn't control your planting, your population, your rate, then you'd have a smart connector. So in those instances, if there's anybody in the room that would want to go to 26.0 and we're repeating the data through a smart connector, if it's coming out of the PDM, it has nothing to do with it. It would be if I don't control my seeding rate with the 2020 and I'm repeating back into a John Deere display, I would need to make a change, just a Y harness. Does that make sense? I don't know how many of those are. We didn't know.
That's on 26.0.
Yes, that'd be going to 26.0. Doesn't change for 25.
Yeah.
And it's only if we are not controlling your seeding rate.
So if you're on panoramic out here, that's 25.18 or whatever you're on.
If you're running 25.1, that's already in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. That's a good question. Sorry, I forgot about that. Other questions?
Did the .0 have remote access display this year?
No. You would have had to been on limited release in 25 to get panorama and to have live stream. So if you had panorama and live stream this last year planting or harvesting or spraying, you would want to be on 26.0.
You were on 25.
You were on 25.1 last year, you'd be on 26.0 this year. It's another good question. It also tells me how good a job I did of explaining it. So I appreciate that. It's not easy to understand, and we get that. We didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, but we wanted to spend enough time that at least you guys could ask the right questions. And we'd rather have you ask the question now and be educated than wait until March or April and be sitting at the end of the field and not have what you need. This is the first of its kind. We don't typically do this, but there's been enough changes. We've had enough years of the Gen 3 display that there's just some things that it'd be better for all of us to get leveled up to the most recent version of what path you want to be on.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Brent, but if the guys in the room that were running panorama last year, they were on 25.18, whatever it would be. Then now if we've moved them to 26, they're effectively not seeing any change in their monitor. It's just updating the number in the corner of the screen. They're not any effectiveness, nothing different on the screen, how it's set up, any of those things.
No,
So that's part of the, you had that panorama before. Going to 26.0 there's essentially just the update of the things that they packaged throughout the production and then fixed it on, or put it into the 26.0 software.
There are really no visible changes between 25.1 and 26.0. The only real change were the two that I had on the slide, where we finally tied crop settings back to the active crop, and we fixed Past Master's filter. Outside of that, the home screen will look the same, the configuration looks the same. You go from 25.1 to 26.0, you just put the flash drive in, hit the update button. Nothing to worry about.
Perfect.
If we went to 26.1, and we're confident to do that on the planter, is there any reason to, because you can't go back from that?
You can go to 26.0, but you could never go back to 25.
Is there any concerns on with yield sense?
No, YieldSense has compatibility in 26.0.
No.
Nope. Yeah, there would be no YieldSense, and YieldSense was compatible with 25.1 this last fall. Yep. Good question. I had put a lot of thought into YieldSense, but. Okay, well, obviously I realize there's a big group of us. We're not gonna labor too long on this. What do you say we take 5 minutes?
Sure.
Let everybody use the bathroom, get a soda, wake themselves up from my long, boring speech about software, If you've got questions, maybe now's a good time to catch one of us while it's fresh in your mind. We're gonna come back, we'll jump into Panorama, and we'll talk about some of what we can do, some of the features, how we can help you this spring, maybe give you a little bit better experience with the 2020 if it fits your operation. So let's take 5.